Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
And we are rolling too.
Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Today's guest is Leslie Medema. Leslie is from South Dakota, USA, and graduated from the University of South Dakota with a BA in History and Political Science. Currently based in Bali, Leslie's journey from university has led her to fulfill the role as head of academics / head of school at what can be described as one of the most unique and progressive international schools in the world. Her role as head of school for the last 4 years, Leslie has been dedicated to educational reform, challenging the norm, and implementing alternative learning approaches that are significant, engaging, and enriching for all students. Originally, she was appointed as what can be considered a relatively young leader at the age of 35. In that time, Leslie has been described as tenacious, hardworking, committed, and unrelenting in her vision. These traits led to her being affectionately referred to as the honey badger by her colleagues and broader community. Leslie's kind heart, approachable nature, sharp wit, and empathy for others makes her much loved by everyone that comes in contact with her. She's very much a champion of the people, inspirational to many, and here today to discuss her experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Leslie Medema, welcome.
Wow. Oh, thank you. That's beautiful.
I'm glad you liked it. How are you?
Yeah, it's 3 weeks left of my tenure in this role, and I'm having some really big highs and some really big lows. And
why?
I think I get really sad. I mean, this has been 8 years, and I've built a life here. And the one thing about Green School that is one of many is so special, the relationships that you form with people from all over the world and the children. And these are just so familial. And so you think about leaving that, and you think about leaving your family in a lot of ways. And so it gets really emotional. But I know that I have to, kind of do what I preach a little bit, and that I need to continue to learn. And the way to learn is to do things that scare you. And to do things that scare you a little bit is to get out there and, put your vulnerability on the line, put your skills on the line, and keep trying to grow them. And if I don't do that, then and I tell my students to do that, well, then that's not very good. So every 4 years or so, once I get comfortable in a role and I've learned a lot, I really do try to do something different and a little bit more challenging, because that's the only way I keep learning. And if I'm not learning, then I'm not happy. So,
do you feel like you're living by example?
In some areas, yes. I think I do think work-wise, I really do try. I think, of course, in my personal life, no, not all the time. Who does, right? That's where your personal life is where you work out the kinks of your emotion and the kinks of your decision-making and the kinks of life. And I think that's good. And I think that's where we have to and keep growing and keep understanding that. So there are elements of that, that I hope is an example, and elements that no wouldn't be. But
here
at work, I mean, work hard, admit when you're wrong, say you're sorry, try again, like those kinds of things. I would hope that people see that I really do those things.
Are they philosophies that have evolved in your tenure as head of school, or are they philosophies that you've applied to your life? For a long time?
I didn't apply to them for a long time. I learned them here. Green School Bali and traveling internationally taught me that. Okay. I think I probably came here with a over sense of confidence. I used to, not to be cheeky, but I used to teach this class that says how to write your resume like an American, which is, tell them you did everything and tell them how great and amazing and awesome you are. And there's a little bit of that you're taught. And you have to travel internationally and meet people from other parts of the world who do things really beautifully, but in very different ways, and try to interact in different cultures to really see what I think actually works for you as a person, what is your authentic self, and not what your culture or what your education is telling you to be. And I think Green School and traveling, I've been abroad for quite some time, has taught me that.
Yeah. How long have you been abroad, and how many different countries have you worked in?
I left the States in 2004. I had gone, and I was gone until end of 2005. Then I went and worked with Princeton in Asia, which is a not-for-profit organization based at Princeton University that sends young recent graduates, a lot of them teachers, to 19 now different countries in Asia to do service work for a year, kind of like Peace Corps.
Gotcha.
And so I managed that program. I did that program in Vietnam. So I spent significant amounts of time, almost 2 years in Vietnam, a lot of time in Cambodia, at least 3 full summers, so almost probably 9 months in China. I spent significant time in India and 2 years. Then I moved. I was traveling back and forth so much, I moved back to Asia. I moved to Singapore in 2008 or 9. And moved to Bali in 2011. So for 15 years, I've been probably 75% of my time in Asia.
Yeah, what attracted you to Asia and Southeast Asia?
Yeah,
specifically.
So I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is now for us a big city, I guess. But by any other stretch of the imagination, I think is a really small place. And I remember I was 14 years old, and I was obsessed with history, and I loved American history. And I went to this used bookstore, and there was this book on the shelf, and I was looking at it, and I pulled it down, and the book next to it, a little teeny tiny one, fell off the shelf. And it was a Vietnamese phrase book. And I remember opening it and reading it. It says it's sort of the introduction to Vietnam, and it was kind of all about the war, in a sense, like the U.S.'s involvement in Vietnam. And I remember reading it and being like, wow, that's really not what I just learned in my history class. My history class was honest, but it wasn't that honest. And I came out of that history class feeling pretty proud of our interactions in Vietnam at that time, and not understanding the incredible complexity of it. And I read this passage, and I took it home, and I was really confused, and had a talk with my father about that. And I just remember getting into this, I'll call it an argument without going into details about it, and being like, well, I'm going to move to Vietnam one day, and I'm going to understand this better. I'm just kind of my 14-year-old mindset, because this is more complex than I know. And I ended up going along. I did study history and political science. I studied a lot of education. I did a lot of teaching all through college. And then at the end of graduate school, though, so it was still several years later, I was still 25 before I found this Princeton in Asia program, and was selected to go to Can Tha in the 5 hours south of Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam to teach and to understand. And I've never gone home, really. And I was going to go home and teach history and kind of have that perspective, but I didn't go home, and I haven't done that yet. I mean, I've been home, but
when you were reading that history about Vietnam and you had all these questions, did you feel like you were being fed some propaganda and you wanted to challenge it?
Yeah, I mean, you could say it that way. I'm sure I didn't think propaganda in that terms, but I remember being really confused because, I think I sort of believed most of what I was told, and I sort of believed most of what I read. I'm 14, and I really loved reading, and it was just a really different perspective. Yeah. And so that was confusing. And since I kind of believed all the stuff I was reading, what if 2 things I was reading said different things? Yeah. And so, my family loves to debate, and so we would debate these things out. And I remember getting really emotional in that debate and being like, there's something I don't understand, and I don't know why I don't understand it, but I want to understand it. And that has been how I've approached learning, I think. Even
as a child, though, have you always had that inquisitive nature?
Yeah.
And if something doesn't sit right with you, you feel like you want to explore and you want to challenge, or you don't. You haven't thought about it?
Well, if being very argumentative is that as a child, yes, perhaps.
Who, with your parents or teachers?
Oh, probably no. Probably just with my parents.
Yeah.
Probably just chat. Just my dad, actually, just chatting.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually not sure that I actually was like that as a kid. I don't remember that well, but I just remember I just soaked everything up that I loved.
You love learning.
I loved learning.
Right.
I remember, in high school putting together an engine for a lawnmower, and I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever done, because it was just so new. And, and I remember all the books that I read, and I remember just soaking it in and being very, very curious.
Like, so would you consider yourself a good student?
I was a good student in the traditional
sense, and naturally academic, good grades.
Yeah, I had very good grades, but unlike a lot of people, it was a little bit of perfectionism. It was more for the grade and not for the learning. It was purely because if you got straight A's, then nobody bugged you about anything. But I still I loved learning, but it wasn't for learning's sake at that time.
Okay.
It was for the grades.
Do you feel that perfectionism is like a double-edged sword? Can it be a blessing and a curse?
Oh, totally. I think your greatest strength is your greatest weakness, and I think your strengths are your weaknesses. I think in every stretch of the imagination. So absolutely, these are the kinds of things that help you, and then the kinds of things that hurt you in different ways. And it's having the awareness around, which parts of them are helping you and which parts of them are not actually helping you. And that's what. Thank God my 40s, are teaching me finally, is that, okay, this got you far and this was something you needed to do to get to this phase, but actually it's time to maybe come up with a different strategy around some of these things. And we all do things. They're all reactions to how you're raised, or reactions to experiences you have, and some of them protect you and some of them at one point protect you, and then you get older and they don't protect you anymore, and that's super common.
Like tools for living that you develop as a child.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
But being the tools, you like straight A's, right? I got what I wanted. I got to go to school. I got it paid for. I got to go to an amazing graduate program. I got that paid for. I got all of those things that I wanted, and I got all these experiences, travel. These are all things I really wanted. Now in my adulthood, this is not good. This is where I'm at a stage, and especially in this job, where my things that I do every day, every decision I make, can have a really big impact on other people and other people's lives. And so if I don't admit that I actually am not perfect, and I don't know everything, and that I make mistakes, and I don't listen to the brilliant people around me, then I actually do much more damage than, when I was kind of just doing the things on my own, for my own self. And that transition is really, really critical. And I see it all the time when we keep pretend. Actually, it gets worse. The older we get, we have to be the experts, because now we're older. And
so that realization in itself is the mark of a true leader. Well, think about dictators all over the world in history. They just couldn't admit they were wrong.
That's so many of us. It's so many of us, and it's really.
Why do you think humans are like that? Do you think part of the human condition? Is it ego-based, fear-based?
Well, I think it's super fear-based.
Yeah.
I think, at heart, we're all little kids too. That's, I think, why I relate so well. We're all kind of the same. We're afraid of things. We want friends. We need friends. We need to be liked. We actually do want to be liked. Most people, not everybody, of course, but we, and we want to feel safe in our homes. We want to feel safe in our finances. We want to feel like we're intelligent. We don't want to be dumb. Nobody wants to feel dumb. And we want to feel like we're skilled at something and we have something to offer. And those are things that, from a very little kid to an adult, that we all want. But the older you get, the more you try to hide it. And you try to hide your insecurities.
So are you kind of saying that we, as adults, we still run off the tools that we developed as kids, and we still try to use them in adult life?
Oh, I think we do, until we learn to. Yeah. We have to use different ones. And
I'm actually saying that because I really identify with what you're saying. Yeah. Like, as a 40-plus-year-old man, I've come to that realization sometimes. I'm like, oh, wow.
That's what I used to do. And it's important to do personal work. And I don't mean you all this therapy or that therapy, though I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
But it is very important to continue to, do your work and understand yourself and understand why you have reactions and where they're coming from, and to try to develop and do different habits. I mean, you're never going to be perfect, but you really have to keep trying
To evolve.
to evolve. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be. I think that's what happiness actually is. Not like this incredible feeling of joy all the time, but this feeling that I'm still growing and I'm still trying.
Do you consider yourself a spiritual person, or is that evolved?
Well, growing up, I was very religious.
Okay.
And felt a very strong connection to the church.
Yeah, okay.
And then went through sort of that phase of angst where a lot of people go through, and then that again was all too confusing. There was just too many contradictions. That point of your life, especially those teenage years where everything is like either fair or unfair or true or not true, or or like somebody's lying, everyone's lying to you all the time. So then, of course, you throw everything away. You kind of go, well, not everybody, but you go the opposite direction. Yeah. And then I think I spent a lot of years in nowhere land on that, belief-wise. And I've come around to definitely believing and knowing actually scientifically that we all have energy, right, and we all give out energy, and that impacts each other, and that there is a connection between us all that is something we can't put our finger on or is unsaid or unseen.
Here's a loaded question.
Okay.
How do you gauge happiness?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely not having an awesome feeling all the time.
Uh-huh.
For me, it's that I have good friends, I've paid my bills, and I can travel a little bit here and there when I want to travel, and that I feel safe where I am, okay, and that I'm growing. And when I am not growing, let's say I'm binging Netflix for 2 months because I just can't open that book and I'm exhausted. Those 2 months, I'm not very happy because I know I'm not growing and learning. I mean, for the first week, I'm happier than anybody in the whole world because, it's something new. But then after that, I'm like, okay, I know I'm in a rut, and I know I'm not learning, and I know I'm not growing. And so for me, these are simple little measures of how you're doing.
I agree. And do you find happiness in some of your landmark achievements? Because you've had significant ones, in my opinion.
Yeah. Let's see. I have to think. I mean, I have pride. I have huge pride, and I'm really proud of myself.
But do you find happiness in those things?
Yeah.
So let's have a personal achievement of some type, like. Have you found, like, when you've achieved something, like maybe even obtaining the head of a really unique, special, globally recognised school, which is quite amazing at a young age, I think a young leader. I mean, was there happiness from that, or was it...
Fear. Straight up fear.
Okay.
Good fear. I was scared out of my boots. I mean, that's a lot of responsibility. And
a lot of courage.
It took, and I just knew I was entering something that would be so hard, interpersonally and personally, and from that, you would have learned so much. But I also was scared. I didn't want to learn at other people's expense, and I came to another realization about how that works. It's not quite black and white like that. But so I was very happy. But it's just not that clean and clear to say that because I was scared. So why did you take it on? Because I was scared. I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, big fan of that. That means you're going to grow. I mean, healthy. I used to talk to students when I worked with students, like, do something every day that scares you. That's an Eleanor Roosevelt quote. And okay, healthy fear. let's not be crazy here and risky business all over the place. But no, healthy fear. Things that push you intellectual, things that push you physically. I've actually I'm not a sports person by ability, but I used to run marathons, and I used to try and do all of these things because that really I knew would scare me in a good way. And I believe in that.
Or is it out of your comfort zone?
Out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I believe in that. As long as you're being physically safe about it, I believe in it.
And you like being in that space?
I really like being in that space.
You thrive in that space?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure I do, because
you must be in that space often.
Pretty much everything that
Every
walks
day?
through my not door, because I don't have a door, I'm like, oh no, what's coming? One thing will happen and it will never happen again. It's not like you learn from something that happens, because the next thing, because it's a human endeavor, there's 1,000 people in my sphere right now. And so the thing that comes through that door is going to be different. So I do thrive in that space. I like that space. Yeah.
So, like, maybe you could just describe to me a day in the life of Leslie, head of school.
Well, I'll try to do today.
An average day. Well, yeah, tell us an average day. Like,
Okay.
I mean, if I reflect on my time as a teacher, I've been a teacher for 15 years. Majority of that was as a PE and sports teacher, but I have kind of evolved in other directions, but it's still the fundamental of what I do. And there was a long time where I was a sports coordinator, and there'd be the sports day every week, and I remember it like it's a leadership role, and some days I'd get home and I'd say to my wife, like, oh, I wish I wore a GoPro to school today, so you could see all the interactions I've had. So and so's busted their ankle. So and so needs money for the bus, like, and it was just putting out fire after fire after fire. Is that what it's like for you?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's, I come early because I have to finish a memo that I have to,
So you'll start early?
Oh, I might. What
time would you get into school?
Well, usually 7:30.
Okay.
I've been late this year a bit.
I think you're allowed to be.
I think I'm on the way on a different route.
So yeah, average day.
Yeah, it would be 7:30. Write a memo or something that has to get done. That's about the only time I ever am actually at my desk and can think, is from 7:30 to 8. Then I try to walk around and see everybody, welcome people. Half the time I might have something, like this morning, a middle school kid came into my office because he had to talk through a little incident, a little moment of time. That was just a little moment of time, but we had to have a little chat about it. And then, about 8:15, I realized I'm on my third cup of coffee, and that's about because I was up at 5:45.
Right.
And I've scheduled back-to-back meetings with 2 parents on quick things. The one might be something about admissions and some questions about what high school will look like next year. And the next one, might be something about somebody wanting to give me some very cool advice or thoughts. They've been here for a year now, and they have some advice on how we can do something better. And then you might have a staff meeting where you have all your heads together and you have a chat. And sometimes you're working through a calendar problem because the government just changed a date, of an event from this day to this day. And how you deal with that. Or we might have to talk about elections, which are being will have already happened in Indonesia, but tomorrow they're making a statement about who won the election. And so, and all the embassies have put out warnings about events that could happen based on this. So then you're like, okay, do we need to write an email to the community? What's our security protocol? How do we update that? And then you might go right into a fire drill. The fire drill goes, and then I have to put on this green jacket that says Head of Human Evacuation, which
I loved it.
Super funny and my favorite title ever. And then you go around looking for kids. 2 kids are missing. You find them. Blah blah blah. You go back to work, and
you rocked it.
And it's maybe lunchtime by then. That's lunch. And then I don't know. Right now, it is what it is. So, I just came out of a meeting with 5 kids who want to do work on a protest for climate action, climate change. Which is wonderful and awesome, and we would support that fully. But do we feel comfortable supporting that this week, given the climate that's happening and given the warnings that are out? And so you talk about that. Then I'm here at a podcast, and I'll go home, and I still haven't looked at my email all day. So then I'll have a look at my email, and usually it's kind of select all, put in the archive folder because it's just too overwhelming. So, probably 35, 45 different interactions. I've been to, and I also been to 3 other offices today to work on visas and quitasas and all kinds of stuff. So, it just kind of comes.
When does it end?
Yeah.
When does your day end?
This year I've been really good, and when I go home, my day, but it ends. But in the past, it never really did.
Would you consider yourself a workaholic?
Yes, totally.
Why?
Because it's something I know I can be mostly good at.
Gotcha.
And that, that does feel good. And, that is something that is hard to deny, and I also really like what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. It's fun. Like I like going home and writing policy or something, or writing a piece of curriculum, or thinking
Nerd.
I know. I like it. It's fun. So it's, but I do need to come up with, I need some more
Has
hobbies.
has it been to your detriment at times?
Oh, my best friends would say yes,
Okay.
I'm sure. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I struggle a lot with the fact that this turning 40 thing just happened. And it surprised me. I have a twin who I adore. It surprised my twin. It surprised my parents. Suddenly I was 20 and then I was 40. And I think that was really that was a super hard transition, because I also had a lot of other things I wanted to do before, quote unquote, I turned 40.
Gotcha.
And so I don't think there's anything to detriment, but it just wasn't, quote, supposed to happen that way. It was supposed to be more controlled or slower or something. I don't know. But
Yeah, and I've really noticed that. I think in your position, you almost have to live and breathe the job. But I do notice that you take a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I watch you in the mornings go around and welcome people to the school. I mean, is that something you just want to do? I don't think it's an actual expectation. I mean, there's a lot of leaders of schools that would just hide in their office all day and they might come out for an assembly.
yeah. I want to be with the kids. I want to see the kids come in.
I've noticed.
Yeah, they're really, really special. They're why I feel 20 and not, and I like seeing them come in. The kids come in here really happy for the, and it's really fun to see that.
It is.
They're excited to go to school and they're excited to see their friends, and they say hi to their teachers, and that's just, it keeps me young. So I like walking around.
So you consider yourself a good student, academic, and then your primary school years, then high school. What were your high school years like? Was it a positive experience?
Yeah, so, I mean, nerd alert, in a great way. I was on the debate team. I was in the marching band. I was on all the accelerated classes, and had a really tight group of friends that were really intellectual and loved to debate and loved to think and loved to look at the broader world and learn languages. And so it was a small group of friends, and I'm still friends with most of them, and we still know each other very well. And actually, my best friend, my sister, is still one of those. Laura.
Are you an identical twin?
No. Sorry, I call her my sister. I have a twin brother.
Gotcha.
I have a twin brother, Joe, and a younger brother. Okay. And so, I mean, they were fine. They were fine. They were really very South Dakota. I mean, we were in South Dakota. We went on a band trip once to Florida and drove down to Florida. And we all had jobs from a very young age, working in different places, and we all hung out, and it was we weren't that naughty. We didn't get up to that. We didn't get up to no good, really. We were pretty mellow, actually, kids. When I look back,
like you said, it's very South Dakota. Okay, can you explain that to a bogan from Wollongong, Australia?
Same,
What
probably.
is it? Because in Australia, a bogan is like a redneck.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Would you what's South Dakota
there is
like? Is it a redneck area? What is it like? I don't know.
Well,
it's really unfamiliar to me. I'm sorry.
It is really rural. It's very rural.
So
Yep.
farmland.
So
Okay.
it's a big state.
Industry of various types.
Farming.
Farming is the main.
Farming is the main industry. Yep. In recent years, there's been some medical technology and technology that has come to that region. And then for, I would say, all of the 90s, there was a lot of credit card companies with phone stations there you could call in, and people from there be really nice to you and help you solve your credit card problem. But so basically it's really rural. Like most people have a connection to a very, very small town or a farm. I would spend at least a huge chunk of my summers and every other weekend, if I could, on my grandparents' farm, because I loved the farm. And that was, 5 miles away from the nearest town. And that town was, probably less than 2,000 people. my town was an actual town, but again, there wasn't anything else even close to decent size for 4 or 5 hours. So if we wanted to see a concert, we had to drive 5 hours. See a concert. So it's just really rural, rolling plains, rolling farmland.
So you're a country girl.
Super. I mean, I feel like a super country girl. Yeah. If you're in South Dakota, though, right? Like the true country kids won't let a girl from Sioux Falls get away with saying that. But I really feel like the farm is where I grew up, though. I do. That's like if I do an identity map, there's something about that time on that farm with my grandparents that was so special.
That's cool. So, okay, so your high school years, you said, were quite good.
Yeah,
positive. Like it wasn't because sometimes it can be traumatic for a lot of people. But in that time, because I feel that transition from high school into university it is really one of the most. It's probably the biggest transition of your early years of life. Can be very transformational, scary time. Like, who would you consider some of your biggest influences through your younger years, childhood, teens? Did you have a particular teacher that might have stood out?
Oh, I mean, I remember 2 teachers extremely well. Mrs. Tenacious, and I'll never forget. Yeah, I always we just called her Mrs. T because I could never say it. And she actually recently passed away, and my mom let me know about that. She was absolutely gorgeous, and she kind of in middle school plucked me out of classes and said, "Hey, you're kind of a quirky one, and you have a quirky little mind, and I want to help you kind of follow some of your passions," and put me in kind of this on and off this sort of special class with her and some other kids, and that was just life changing. And then when I got to high school, it was Mr. Felstead, and he was the history teacher, and that was why I became a history major. The way he made it come to life, I was just enamored by it.
Did they make you feel special?
Yeah, they did. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Is that why you, like, or was it their methods?
Well, Mr. Felstead was tough. I mean, there was just no letting up. And so it was just really, I mean, we were doing college level work, and I felt so proud. And Mrs. T, I think she just thought I was special, and she noticed that, and having a teacher notice that you're special is
she
really
try to
amazing.
Nurture it and extend you?
Yeah.
And like try to extend you as well? Yeah.
Yeah, that was the program.
Yeah, like what about outside of school?
Well,
friends, family?
Yeah, we had a big family. My mom had 4 brothers, and we were close to all of them. And
they lived in the area.
We all lived in the area. My grandparents, and then my grandmother on my dad's side. We were all super, super close. My dad's sister. Yeah, we're really close family in that way. But I also, you grow up with a twin, and you have this automatic friend for life that you can kind of go through things with. And then we had a very athletic younger brother, and he was super fun to watch growing up because we got to go to all these games. And there was
what did
always,
he play?
He's a basketball player.
Okay.
And he's great at everything. He got those skills, like you, and it was just really fun to be able to cheer and for teams and do all of that kind of stuff. So that was super fun.
So, like, did you transition straight from high school to university?
I did. I went straight to University of South Dakota.
And how? Well, maybe tell us about your university years. Were they good times?
No, they were pretty unhappy times.
Were they? Why?
I really felt trapped. I don't know, that's cliche for a kid from the Midwest, but I was like, how do I get out of here? I don't know how to get out of here.
Small town?
Yeah, it was even, I mean, the town I went to high school in at the time, or university in at the time was 5,000 people.
Uh-huh.
So it was a very small town. And it just, I don't know, I felt really different than everyone else, and I felt outcasted, and I felt weird.
Yeah.
And I just... my closest friends during that time were actually professors. And then toward the end of my time there were some German exchange students and exchange students from other countries. I was just enamored by the world and had never gotten out and never kind of figured out how to get out. And by that time I was feeling pretty trapped in that. And so I graduated from there in 4 years, but I ended up spending a big chunk of time away from there. So I spent 6 months in Massachusetts doing an exchange program. I spent 6 months in the Capitol Pier doing an internship.
In teaching?
Actually, those was just in educational.
Okay.
All during that I taught. No, not all during that. Was it the second year, sophomore year? I taught Spanish in grade 3 at the local school. But almost all through that, I was a school bus driver for the city.
No way.
So that's my first job in education. So there were 3 or 4 of us. There were only 3 or 4 buses for the whole town.
While you're a university student.
Yeah, that's how I put
So
myself. That's how I paid for uni. I had another job too, but yeah. So my job started at 5:30 every morning in uni.
That's
and then,
so cool.
Yeah, it was. So
Was it one of those big yellow buses?
yeah, 65 passenger big yellow bus. I would go out with the mayor of the town in the morning. On winter mornings to decide if we were going to call school off based on road conditions.
Well, like snow day.
Yeah, it was myself and old Bill Radigan. We got to go out and
make the call.
Together. And I was 18 and a half at the time, and he was closing in on 80. And then over time, there were other people that I worked with there that, I really cared about. But it was myself, and by the end, it was myself and I believe 4 guys running the route. And I would always take the...
Were you in charge?
No. I was the baby. I didn't even... And we would go... I would take the boys football team from the local high school to their games, right? And you got to go at that time to McDonald's, right? And you got a free meal if you're the bus driver. And they never would give it to me. They always had to have proof from the boys of them saying, yeah, she's actually our bus driver. Because I was an 18-year-old kid.
That's so funny.
So,
driving what? What are we talking? Primary school kids to school? Middle school? High school?
Because it's a small town, it would all... So
everyone?
My route was about 60 miles a day. Well, each route. So 60 miles in the morning, 60 miles in the afternoon. And it was dropping off just 1, 2, 3 kids at a time because they were all farm kids. So, you'd head out and 1 or 2 here, 1 or 2 here, 1 or 2... And by the time you come back, you've got kids from all age groups in there.
Yeah, so you knew early on that you wanted to be a teacher. So even in that phase of your bus driving,
no,
you were like, no.
I was teaching, and I love kids. I was doing camps.
What, as an intern? You were teaching as a university student?
Yeah, I would convince them to let me come in and teach. I was taking Spanish, and I was learning about education, so I'd convince the local school to let me come in and teach them Spanish, or I would just do tutoring classes for kids that were struggling with history in particular. Because I would help with that, and I loved it. And all summer, for 5, 6, 7 summers, I did camps. I did a lot of camp counseling, and I loved kids, and I loved all aspects of education. But both my grandmothers are teachers, and I actually didn't want to be a teacher at that stage. I really thought I would be a child. What are they called? A family child protection lawyer.
Okay.
And I would work on behalf of children in the legal system. I was really interested in that, and I spent one summer working in a place that helped those kids going through that, and it was so impossible. It was so sad.
Why?
Those kids were so abused, and I just
dare I say beyond repair?
Oh, I have some, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I was so not an expert at that time. I wouldn't know, but looking back, yeah. And that was definitely going to be too hard. And I wasn't going to do well if I didn't get what I wanted in that court case or in that whatever. So I looked at lots of other things, really interested at that point then in public policy related to all kinds. I was interested in agriculture policy, education policy. I was interested in all kinds of different things. I was interested in politics and was liking all of that as well. So no, it was a journey. Then
when did you actually get a proper teaching gig?
Not till after my master's degree.
Okay.
Yeah, I got my master's in public policy, public administration, public MPA, public affairs.
Yeah.
And then and got a teaching job
in high school,
in college in Vietnam.
And that was just so who were you teaching? Like Vietnamese kids of what age? All ages?
18.
Okay. So like senior students. And you were teaching them history, English?
No, I was doing kind of like guidance counseling. So they all wanted to work in international companies at some point or thought. So we were applying for jobs. We were writing business memos. We were writing all those different sort of in a preparatory, sort of a work preparatory way.
Yeah.
I did that for a long time. Not a long time. I did that for a year, but then I kept helping with that for quite some time in different ways. So
that's interesting because then, like, you've sort of been talking a lot about your attraction to like policy writing.
Yeah,
various types.
Yeah, I don't know about policy writing, but I find it really interesting. I mean, I find policy really interesting, and how it changes behaviors or doesn't change behaviors or anything
of the masses.
Yeah, it can be organizationally or it can be from a government level. Yeah, it can be. But I looked at government. I talked to my friends about this a lot, but I looked at that government level stuff. That was always too big for me. I always did like being in organizations or closer to the ground, working with individual people versus being in the government part of that sector. Even though I did a year of that in Washington D.C. Yeah, I did a year of that, but after college,
So then, like, okay, so you were in Vietnam, and then you sort of talked earlier about you'd done a bunch of teaching jobs in Southeast Asia and Asia. So I guess like what I'm curious about is like when did you what attracted you to Bali and this particular school?
I came to Bali on vacation. I have to admit that. I didn't know Green School was in its third year of operation, and it wasn't known. It wasn't well known. The TED Talk was well known at that point in time, and I wanted to transition away from education a bit for a while. Actually, I was doing NGO management in the education field, right? So I was helping run this NGO that sent these teachers to Asia, all over Asia. So I wanted to kind of move away from that a little bit, and I was actually taking on my online nursing prerequisites, and I was going to go to nursing. Or I thought about it. I don't know how serious I was looking back, but I was serious in that moment. And so I came to Bali on vacation from Singapore. I was working on this NGO out of Singapore, and a friend of mine there said, "Hey, go meet this gal. She's a midwife, and she's in nursing, and you'll have a great conversation and talk to her about the profession." So I was like, great. So I came to Bali to visit my two close, dear friends who also live here, and went and talked to her. And then she started telling me about the school that her kids went to. And it was Green School, and that it was so startup phase that there were only 35 kids in the high school. They didn't have a high school program necessarily. They didn't know how kids were going to graduate. They didn't know how kids were going to get into university. And, little bits, that had never been my exact job, but little bits and pieces of my life experience all were kind of part of that. And then eventually they ended up, so I talked to the board chair at the time, and they ended up offering me a very contemporary type of position to kind of help get things organized, help start to think through what the future of the program could be and how kids could maybe get into university. And I ended up running with that. And we made a whole new program basically from scratch.
So did you see that opportunity before you came here? Wow, here's an opportunity to implement a program as I see it based on your previous experiences.
I'm not sure I understood that right away, but day two I did.
Okay.
Day two I did.
And like from the very start, like at the moment, I mean, the school, has a very big focus on experiential learning, project-based. Was that your vision and goal at the start, to make it as hands-on as possible?
No, my vision was that kids would feel comfortable and safe being who they were. It was. I had this Abraham Lincoln quote that it's like, whoever you are or whatever you are, be a good one. That was my original vision and mission, because I had just wanted kids to go to school and be happy. I felt it was really weird that a lot of people said they hated school. I didn't hate school myself at all, but I do know most people who do it, and that's what a shame. You're young and you're vibrant and you're so interesting, and you hate what you do most days. So could we find a place and where the people would learn and be challenged and stretched, but actually where they were comfortable being who they were, they celebrated who they were, and they used who they were and their special skills to make the world a better place. It can be in a small way or in a big way, but if we all did that, we'd be totally fine.
Yeah, and I think the learning in the actual and physical learning environment as well really contributes to that. I mean, so many schools in developed countries are just these brick buildings
Oh,
and
yeah.
these little jammed full of student classrooms, and it's sterile and cold, and I mean that's actually what I remember from school. Like, I just actually did not like being in those rooms.
Right.
I just feel like claustrophobic.
Yeah.
And I think it really does have a big impact on well-being, especially for teenagers. So, so that was your vision. I love that. Like, how did it evolve then from there? Like, so there was no program. You had there was no university access strategy.
Yeah. No,
I mean, was
accreditation.
university access driving the development of the high school curriculum?
Well, I remember my interview really clearly, and the board chair saying to me, actually, we want you to put as much time and energy into the non-university bound students as the university bound students. So it was basically the more concept of pathways. What is this child's pathway? But they definitely were nervous about whether or not a university pathway would be open. Not everybody wanted to say it, but that was a big concern for people. So I don't think it drove the program at all. In fact, I think we kind of came up with our whole program and then we made it fit a university story so they would understand what we were doing.
Yeah.
I think we did it in reverse. So here's what we want to do. We want to teach in 6-week blocks. We want children to have a ton of choice. We want them to even be able to help make up courses that they want down the line. We want them to have flexibility in what kinds of credits they get. We want them to be able to take a lot of something if they love it and take the foundation pieces of what they don't love. But who says 3 credits or 3 years is what you need? What if you get it in 2 or 2.5? And you wanted all those different flexibility and to serve all the needs of our students. So best we could. That wasn't going to be perfect. And we also had a lot of students who learned differently, and we wanted them to. I mean, nothing worse than failing your first exam and then knowing you have a whole year of that course and you can never pull out of it. So we wanted chances, we wanted do-overs, and we wanted, all kinds of those opportunities.
And when you were doing that, were you constantly reflecting on what the mainstream was doing and trying to maybe address that?
Yeah, well, we were reading 9 different curricula. So we picked 9 curricula that were really simple. Places like Nova Scotia that had a really beautiful curriculum and was really simple. Or we would take I think it was 2010 science standards from Australia, and we'd take this from here and this from there. The point was we took curricula we felt had done a really nice job of simplifying. And then we would be constantly referencing it. Constantly in developing the program to make sure we were in line and understanding if all 9 of them were doing something, we kind of were like, okay, this is important. We have an international group of kids, and this is one way to do it. And
you don't want to do them a disservice.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, were you responsible for developing, like, the real acronym and the I respect values? And I'm just curious.
No, the I respect values were one of the very first things ever developed at Green School, and they were developed before we even opened. And that's a lovely story, but we can get into that another time. But that's a lovely story. The real acronym just came to light this year, but I suppose it's been in discussion for 2 or 3 years by a multitude of people. Yeah. Yes, I was at the center of that conversation all the time and part of that conversation all the time. But I was always helping with those conversations. But when you get in those conversations as educators, it just gets like all of a sudden you have 12 and all of a sudden you have 15 because this is important and that is important, right? Because everything is important for a kid. My whole thing during that process is it has to be so simple and clear and easy for every child to understand. If they don't know what it means to be democratic in terms of a learning program, like at 3rd grade, then I just don't know how they're going to learn this across the board. So we wanted it to reflect organically how we'd grown. I think we went the opposite direction. We were comfortable not having something for quite a while to see how it actually developed and then describe what the pieces. And
having brave families to
very
go along
brave
for the ride.
Super brave. Super brave.
It must have felt a deep sense of responsibility to them.
Yeah, I mean, the entire time you're sitting there around with teachers and you're researching more than anyone, and I'm cross-referencing with people all the time, making sure, but the entire time you're like, oh my gosh, we're putting the wings on this airplane as it's going, not putting the wheels on the bus as it's going. I mean, it did feel that intense because they are children.
Schools are such an enigma, and I was just listening to what you're saying then, and it's like working and functioning in a school environment and being a teacher in it, it's such a craft. And it takes years, doesn't it, to really develop that high level of experience. Like it's
well,
there's definitely, it'll never ever be black and white, and there's no, I don't know if you disagree or agree, but there's just no perfect formula.
No. And every time somebody's like, well, here's this curriculum, it's great, here's this method, I was like, I'll never understand how this one thing is the right answer to education when you have humans in front of you. And so there is no answer, and people just can't stand that. There is no right answer. There are some really good philosophies. There's some really good practice. There's some really good intuitive people and some really highly skilled people in this profession who, in a way that is almost like you're born with it in some sense, but almost like it's like second nature. They figure it out for a child. And I might have to talk to two kids really differently to each other to have the same thing happen for them and for what their needs are. So I just never understand.
Do you think it's really, do you think it's really important? Obviously, it's a priority to understand your clientele. That as a first thing. And it sounds like that's what you do, like try and understand the student population the best you can and their needs.
Yeah, and it has changed over the years, and so the program is meant to change as well.
In what way?
They've had different needs. It's actually a small population right now. It's 120 kids in the high school, 500 in the whole school. You think about it, you will have phases where certain kids, you might have kids, this year you might have 10 or 15 kids who have dyslexia. But you maybe didn't have that prior, or one or two kids. And so different resources, different ways of teaching need to be employed. So that it has to have some flexibility in that to stay relevant to your student body and to stay innovative, too. It can't just, now we're done with the curriculum there, boom. But some of it has to be stable because, teachers and students and human beings need stability, too. So what we haven't found yet, and the elusive thing I've been looking for is, what is that mixture of things that stay the same and things you're always innovating with, and how much is too much and how much is destabilizing and how much doesn't allow for how much putting too much down doesn't allow for innovation, or for new teachers to come in and bring their special skills and impact on the program in a beautiful way. So that sort of give and take has been something that has really stressed a lot of people out at the school and still does. Those of us who like that give and take and are okay with not answering it and just being aware that we need to be very cautious have stayed a long time. I've really liked it.
Interesting. Are you still inspired as much as ever?
Yeah, but I tell you what, I don't want to, be all, whatever. I can't even come up with words anymore. I'm so burnt out. I will admit that. But I don't want to... I don't want to be in a head roll again for a while, because I want to. I have much more fun doing program development. I have much more fun having connections with the students in a more authentic way, and so I really am eager to do that. And that can be, teacher development, student projects, teacher curriculum, all of that. That's what I want to do. Next, I need to take a break.
Is that your next focus?
Yeah, I'm going to help others.
What's that going to look like on a practical level?
That's a really good question. Actually, that is something we're working out. What does that look like? What does it look like to take these learnings from Green School and the Green School way to another place? And what are the important elements of it that are absolutely Green School, and what are elements we have to let organically build within the culture that you're now operating in, like Green School Bali got to, because it sure won't look like this. So what are those core elements? And we've got lots of ideas, but actually the next year is a journey to figure that out.
So you're not disappearing from the green sphere?
No, I'm around. And Bali. I can't leave Bali yet. I don't know. It's my home, and I don't know. I need to
advising,
yes.
Giving input,
yeah,
guiding, sharing your experience, knowledge,
yeah. Oh, for sure. All of that here and in other green schools where they're setting up.
Yeah, I love what you said at the start about, like, you're 4 years in a very intense position. And then you feel like it's time for a change. Like, I remember a mentor of mine, she retired right on 60. She retired fresh, and she was stoked on life, inspired, and she just knew that it was her time. Her tenure was up. And I said, like, what's the secret? Like, you've retired so strong and stoked on life. And she's like, in this profession, you need to reinvent yourself every 5 years to stay fresh. And she said, that's what I did my whole career, whether it be I changed schools, changed my role within the school, establish a program that's completely out of my expertise. And the school that she left, her last school that I used to work at, they still have programs that she established from years ago, and they're going great, And so she left her mark, and that just resonated with me so much because it's very easy to see those that are just getting their paycheck from week to week, and those that actually are trying to evolve. So, and they're still fresh and happy. So,
well, I've observed over the years that there's sort of three streams.
Yes.
There's that group that needs to keep evolving, yes, and trying new things every 4, 5, 6 years in order to stay fresh. There's a group of teachers that really want to become part of administration. They really want to push themselves, and they want to work their way up that way. And then there's this group that just want to be absolutely the best fourth grade teacher the world has ever known. And I think, and they're completely dedicated to that and in love with that, and that's their path. So I think it's a little bit too about knowing yourself and knowing what you need, and not going with one of those paths because you're supposed to, and not going on the wrong path for you. But yeah, really understanding which one is giving you life.
I love that. It's so interesting. So, you don't want to say what's exactly next for you, do you? You don't want to tell me?
Oh, well, I mean, I can tell you. I'm working with Green School as we open other green schools.
In New Zealand?
I'm going to stay in Bali, and I'll be going down there to help. And,
okay.
And I need to base out of Bali just to get my bearings.
So that's happening? That's
happening, yeah. And I'll be in Bali till at least December, maybe a little later. And then after that, I actually really don't know where I'll base out of, if it'll be down there or if it'll be... I would very much... It's been so long, I'd like to go home for a while.
So will your role be curriculum advisor?
Yeah, well, that's a part of it, yeah. There's curriculums, there's programs, there's hiring teachers, actually. You know what? I've always said it doesn't actually matter what any of that stuff is. Just hire the right team of teachers and you're good to go. And so that's a big part of what I want to do. Training.
Do you feel like you have a formula for hiring the right teacher?
No.
Because you blew it with me.
Yeah, right?
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
You were very... Usually I'm like, okay, let's talk. 30 minutes. But you and I were like on the phone for 2 hours. Like, I remember...
That was my next question.
I remember that conversation. I was like...
That was my next question. Let's talk about the honey badger.
The honey badger.
So... You got that nickname, I love it. And in our conversation,
totally,
in our Skype interview, you sent me the YouTube link.
Oh no!
To that, of the honey badger, and he's running down rabbit holes. He got bitten by a snake, and then passed out for a while because he got bitten by a snake.
Yeah, gets right back up and just does it. There's quite a few swear words in there too that I love.
Why do you feel that nickname's... Why do you think you were referred to that in this? Like,
I mean, I don't know, except for the fact that thing is so funny, and I've tried to be really funny in everything I do. And but a little bit. This has been I have very difficult journey as well.
Yeah.
Everybody has an opinion about how to do things, and they're probably all valid. And everybody has an opinion about how not to do things, and they're probably valid too. And you really have to balance a lot of different people and their opinions.
Stakeholders.
And huge amounts of stakeholders and a lot of emotion. You have children involved, and throughout that time, there have been a lot of bee stings. Of bee stings. So it was a little bit like, look, if we're going to be tough, we got to be honey badger about this. We're going to have to be tough skinned,
resilient.
And I just like that it's so little and yet it's so tough. Like it's just a little thing, like making a big impact in the world and making a big difference in the world. And we got bit by a lot of snakes. Actually, we got right back up. And
No scars?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Metaphorically, obviously.
Metaphorically, scars. Yes, actually, but nothing that isn't part of life, you know.
And I think that's what I'm learning in this environment, like a school environment, is I kind of feel like, that you have to be professional, okay? But I also feel that to be really good at the job, there has to be a percentage of personal investment. If you really, that's what I've learned, and that's how I feel, but you may disagree. And that can be really taxing. Yeah, and so...
Yeah, I mean, there's so much personal investment, and yet then there's still quite a few people, because you just have to make decisions, who don't like you.
Yeah.
And it feels really hard, because it feels like it's not. It does feel like it's not a job. It feels like something you're giving everything to, and then some people are really mad at you. But that's not actually what's happening, and you have to realize that that's not actually what's happening overall. But so there's you have to have a big side of personal investment, but yet you have to approach the difficult things professionally.
Well, how do you manage that adversity then?
My first 2 years, I didn't sleep, and I didn't manage it well. Right. And then that's training. That's having good mentorship. That's having good life coaching. That's having people who have gone through it before you and learning from them. And I had, over the course of my time, 2 brilliant educators from Australia give me some coaching over, and that made all the difference.
Right, mentorship. What about self-care? Do you have any strategies? Are you a yoga freak or anything like that?
No, I'm not. Oh, man. Let's talk about that in the next segment on therapy.
But like, you must have some self-care strategies. Is it going
RuPaul's
to
Drag
have
Race.
a couple of bintangs at the Warung?
Oh, no. Well, I love hanging out there, and chatting.
Go to a day spa. Is there ways that, when you are having intense times, because it fluctuates, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, I've taken up scuba diving in the last few years, and that has been incredible. I always I go down there and no one can talk to me. This is amazing. Right. I'm actually, regardless of how I show on the outside, I'm actually very introverted. So usually all the self-care I need is just a day of she-caving, I call it. Just take a quiet day at home. Yeah.
Chocolate, ice cream. Well, yeah, I get it.
Totally. That's Saturday. And then Sunday you're kind of back in action, and I have some very, very good friends, and they take care of me, and they look after me, and they make sure to check on me.
You got a support network.
I do. And I couldn't have done it without them.
So, where do you? This is my last burning question. It's loaded. Okay, you ready? It's a loaded question.
I'm ready.
Okay. Where do you see the future of education?
Oh,
globally, which way is it moving? Like, what are your hopes and dreams for the future of education?
Well, I mean, my hopes and dreams would be that we can all find a place where students feel safe who they are, and actually physically safe in their schools, and that it's a special place to learn, a special place to spend your childhood. I mean, I think we spend a lot of time thinking about this curriculum and that curriculum, but really that's the reality of it. And so do I think we're moving in that direction or not? Oh man, in education I see the most beautiful things happening, and in education I see the most depressing things happening. So I wouldn't know where it shakes out, really, except for that I'm positive, and I think that the possibilities are there. I think politics interrupts it. I actually think there's a lot of money at certain points along the educational journey that actually make it hard to make change. Not where the money should be necessarily, but there's still a lot there, and actually really impacts decision making. And some of that can be good, and some of that cannot be good. But I think we're not fully there yet on understanding all the impacts that.
Do you think we've become too serious?
What, in life?
No, it's like
schools.
Schools.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really, really, I think it's become really, really hard, and I don't know why.
Okay.
I do. I think it's become really hard for a lot of people, for a lot of teachers, a lot of administrators, a lot of parents, a lot of kids. And I'm not completely sure why, and it's probably very complex.
It is so complex.
And but you know, I once taught a class where, you know, I took the headlines of the New York Times around education before every single election since like the 1920s. And they all say the same thing. Kids these days are so rude and education's in the toilet. So I just don't think that can be true. And so I couldn't tell you actually where the points are. I can just tell you I am dedicating myself to, in the sphere that I can, to make it better for the kids around me. And I think if a whole bunch of us did that, we wouldn't even have to ask this question.
Just worry about what you're doing. Keep your side of the street clean.
Yeah, and make life a little bit better for the people around you. Have that mission, and we're all fine.
Yeah.
But
It's beautiful. It really is. Well, it's been epic. It's been an hour and 4 minutes.
Okay.
And, you know, it's just been so great listening to you talk story. Personally, I'm very sad to see you leave. You were a draw card for me, massively.
Yeah.
So, but I feel a sense of hope knowing that your input is still going to be there.
Yeah.
And I already feel that globally, and especially in Australia, the schools, mainstream schools, want to move in a similar direction. That concept, whether it's being done well, that's another question. But I feel that the structures in our country, in Australia anyway, are probably too rigid. But there's a desire there. And
there really is.
And I feel like if someone's not being a beacon of hope, well, you know, we've got no chance. But I think while we keep dreaming, like you are, and hoping, I think that I agree. Change will happen slowly.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a personal life philosophy, and it's hard sometimes, but I do believe almost everything. There's probably a couple things that won't be, but almost everything in life is funny in the end. So it needs time and its approach, and you need to look at it that way, and you need to feel positive as much as you can. And there'll be moments when you don't, and you need to step back and take a break and come back into it.
Yeah, it's like, I remember I seen a meme once, and it was like the picture of the universe, and it had the Earth and all the planets, all the stars, and then it had a little arrow pointing to like a speck, and it says, "You are here."
Yeah.
It's like, I think, it really puts it in perspective.
It puts in perspective. This is a very short existence.
It is.
It is. It's like going back to the beginning of the conversation, like the turning 40 thing. You know, I went to sleep when I was 20. I woke up when I was 40. I was like, okay, what just happened? So
is that because you partied too hard through your 20s?
No, actually, it was my 30s. My 20s were really, really good, really chill. Like. Actually, if my friends hear that, they'll say, "No way, your mid-20s were fun too." But no, it's just too short. It's too short not to have as much fun and have as many deep friendships and take care of people the best way you know how, because it's just ridiculously fast. Yeah. And so we're making a little bit too much out of all of it sometimes, because it blows right by us.
It does.
Yeah.
Well. You done? Is there anything you'd like? Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I'm out. No. I just. It has been such a, like I said, such a privilege to get to know you. I never actually talked to people this long, only just because it's hard to do that. And you were very, very special.
Thank you.
And that was a very special conversation. And I'm glad we could work it all out. I think you're very brave. You have an infant here. You came over with a little one, and not knowing what the next step was, and that is that's that adventurousness. That's that stepping out of your comfort zone so you can learn. And that's even harder when you have family like that. So
yeah, because there was definitely feelings of am I harming them with my boldness? You know.
Yeah, of course.
However, the transition is fairly complete, and we're happier than we've ever been, and we actually see each other more than we ever have
I
as
bet.
a family.
Oh.
Even if the fact that we get to drive together to school and walk in and grab a coffee together, those things never happened back home.
That's true.
And but it was a step, you know, and into the unknown, especially when I was coming from such a safe place. Yeah, so safe. So anyway, it's not about me. Let's not talk about me. Let's talk about
yes,
anyway.
that's really it's true, and so it does so much for your children at this age to get this perspective. It actually creates a mindset in them that's
You think
so open. Oh yeah, I would know. I see it.
Do you?
So open. So
Okay.
they will live richer lives in that way.
Let's hope so.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate having this time with you.
You too. And let's grab a coffee tomorrow.
Okay, let's do it.
See ya.
Okay.